I really appreciate your invitation to be here tonight because this community holds a very warm spot in my heart. Frewsburg was my birthplace. In fact, I well may be one of the last to have been born here rather than in the Jamestown Hospital. Frewsburg is where I grew up, and I am probably one of the last of those whose favorite boyhood hangout was Ed Scheinborn's blacksmith shop. Frewsburg is where, as a teenager, I set pins in the bowling alleys owned by Henry Kyle and Ralph Little, and where I went to the movies once or twice a week at the old Garfield Theater, now the site of Quality Markets. It was Frewsburg High School that allowed me to become a graduate in 1945, and Frewsburg was the home of a cute little classmate named Mary Anna Gearhart, who 7 years later became my first and only wife. So you see, I'm a Frewsburg product, and proud to be so. Now, of course, the reason you came tonight is to hear about another Frewsburg boy, Robert Howat Jackson. Robert's mother was Angelina Howat, known to everyone simply as Lina. She was a pleasant woman of great practicality, industry, fortitude, and devotion to her family. Robert's father was William Eldred Jackson, generally known as Will. He was a sociable man, enterprising, ambitious, independent, and he was a Democrat in a region where that breed was rare. All Jacksons, it seems, are hereditary Democrats. Will and Lina Jackson's son Robert was born in 1892 on the family farm in Spring Creek, Pennsylvania. That farm no longer exists, but the hill that was part of it is still known locally as Jackson Hill. When Robert was 5 years old, the family moved to Frewsburg. The family then included a sister, Ella Jackson, who was 2 years younger than Robert. Ella grew up here, went to school here, later became the wife of Erie Springer, and she worked for many years in the Frewsburg post office. Initially, Will and Lina Jackson owned and operated the Frewsburg Hotel on the northwest corner of Main and Pearl Streets. Within a few years, however, the original hotel building went up in flames. Following the fire, Will Jackson purchased a tract of land on East Main Street from Lucy Ann Fenton. This property included a house which still stands behind the building now known as the Igloo. It also included a large barn which was turned into the W.E. Jackson livery stable. Not long thereafter, he had a new house built on East Main Street and moved the family into it. This is the house where a marker now identifies it as Robert Jackson's boyhood home. In addition to the livery business, Will Jackson raised, trained, raced, and traded horses. And it was from helping his father that young Robert acquired his lifelong love of horses. I remember being told by my mother that whenever anyone in Frewsburg bought a new horse, they wanted to test it against one of Will Jackson's trotters. The usual test was a race down Main Street to Pearl Street, down Pearl and over to Faulkner Street, then back up to Main Street. As a young man, Robert Jackson was a good student, an avid reader, a great debater, and sometimes a prankster. I have been told that one Halloween, he and a classmate tied a rope to the school bell tower and pulled the rope across the roof and into a field. Several times during the night, they rang the bell until neighbors came out to investigate. Then, finding nothing, they returned home, only to be summoned again by the mysterious ringing of the school bell. Following graduation from high school, Robert took a postgraduate course at Jamestown High School. One of the teachers there, Mary Willard, quickly recognized his exceptional skill with words and introduced him to the works of Shakespeare and other classics. This was a major factor in the development of Robert Jackson's remarkable writing ability. It was at this time that Robert decided he wanted to become a lawyer. His father, insisting that he become a doctor instead, flatly refused to assist him, thus making it necessary for him to borrow funds for law school from his mother's brother, John Howard. In 1 year, Robert completed 2 years of work at Albany Law School. From this, it might be assumed that he spent most of the year with his nose buried in law books, but there is solid evidence that he occasionally took time to smell the roses. It was during this year that he met a lovely young lady named Irene Alice Gerhardt. 4 years later, she became Mrs. Robert H. Jackson. After law school, still too young to be admitted to the bar, Robert clerked and read law in the office of his mother's cousin, Jamestown attorney Frank Mott. Then, having reached the age of 21, Robert Jackson passed the necessary exam and was admitted to the New York State Bar in 1913. Meanwhile, Robert's second sister, Helen Mary Jackson, was born in 1904. Helen was 10 years old when her father died, whereupon her brother became her legal guardian and assumed the role of surrogate father. I'm not going to talk much about Robert Jackson's career as a Jamestown attorney, nor about his service in Washington as Solicitor General, Attorney General, and Supreme Court Justice. All of that is well documented elsewhere. Suffice it to say that his law practice here is legendary. It has been said that of the hundreds of cases he argued, he lost a total of 1. As Solicitor General, his performance was such that Justice Louis Brandeis declared that Jackson should be made Solicitor General for life. It also is noteworthy that in addition to his official positions, Jackson was one of a small group of advisors to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. In Washington circles, this group became known as the Brain Trust.